had a presentation about the trade relationship with China. He made an excellent presentation, which was well received by all our CIA members. And thanks to Mr. Murthy, who is the ICC chairman, and he is very senior to all of us, but he is very young in his thoughts and in his actions. And he has agreed to join with CIA and take this webinar to the all India level, so that today our friends in Gujarat and Mumbai also will attend this program. And the methanol economics, before we talk about it, Mr. Venkataraman will explain to you what is methanol economics. And before that, I will request Mr. V.T. Murthy to give an introductory address. I am sure that methanol will be a game changer for India. In fact, way back in '94, when I was in Indian Oil, we tried methanol in 10 outlets in Gujarat along with petrol. 3% we mixed and we tried. It was a successful project. But some of the components required changes in the scooters and other things. And you cannot keep it for more than a month in the petrol tank, in the cars or two-wheelers. But unfortunately, in India, we don't continue such inventions. Even ethanol blending, I think it is happening now. But if the prices are too low, petroleum prices, then oil companies may be reluctant to mix ethanol. So we should have a long-term policies on methanol and ethanol. In fact, ethanol-based chemicals will be another game changer. So I think Mr. Venkataraman will take another session after some time about ethanol also. We will organize that on behalf of CAA and ICC. With these few words, I once again thank our faculties, Mr. Venkataraman and Swaminathan, and thank Mr. Murthy for co-sponsoring this event. And I welcome all the participants for this meet. And whatever your questions, you can please send it to us, and we will try to answer at the end of the meeting. And my friend, my treasurer, CAA treasurer, Mr. Prabhagar, Vice President Malladi Pharma, will give the concluding address. With these few words, I now request Mr. V.T. Murthy to give the introductory remarks. Mr. Murthy.
Good evening to all of you friends. On behalf of Indian Chemical Council, I am very happy to say a few words about Nandini Consultants, that is Mr. Venkataraman and his son, Mr. Swaminathan, and also a few thoughts on methanol. In fact, Mr. Venkataraman and myself have been friends for last 40 years, I think since 1980s probably. And I am one of his admirers of his vast technical knowledge on any subject you take. And you can ask him, he has got all the data, he will reel it out. He is a human tutor on any technical knowledge, especially on chemicals, which I am accustomed to. I remember in 1990s, you used to projects for profiles of projects for small and medium industry. That is how many people knew Nandini, because he used to cater to that segment of industry. And he has trained his son, Swaminathan, now who is based in Singapore. And he has become a specialist on China. China is an area where we have got fantastic opportunities for getting technology or for giving them technology. And we are very fortunate to have both of them here to talk about methanol economy. Now, coming back to the methanol, this is a subject which is very close to me, because our group also tried, from Aditya Birla Group, we also tried to set up methanol plant in Thailand when I was in Thailand. And in fact, the reason I believe, like what Ms. Elena has said, the methanol plant in Tamil Nadu will be a big game changer. You rightly put the correct word, because some other in the last 8 months, since we have been following up with all the three large petrochemical complexes here, but it is going to realize it's going to take time. But they're in an area where at least we can immediately go in for olefins, like from methanol. I think this is an area where we should look at. I was just talking to Mr. Venkataraman about naval lignite, because there's a technology which is being developed or already developed in China for making methanol from coal or lignite, because lignite has got a lower ash. I think if that is true, he tells me that these two projects by Coal India as well as Naval Lignite, they are still thinking, but as he rightly says, the project they start thinking, it takes a couple of years to by the time it comes to the maturity. But we hope that one project at least comes up in methanol, because on behalf of Indian Chemical Council, we have been taking up with the government for ease of doing business, especially on methanol transportation. People who use methanol are finding it very difficult to transport because DL2 license insists for accompanying an officer from the company and along with the police. All this is too much for a company to get methanol. In fact, I'm also personally in touch with some people in the world where they are willing to technology for smaller methanol plant, which can be set up in-house. Of course, this is just still at the preliminary stage. Probably Mr. Venkataraman will throw more light onto that. I believe there is a technology available, and particularly for the if you have got hydrogen or carbon dioxide, many of the power plants also can think about that. But still, the technology is not yet firmly commercial up to a commercial stage. But I just thought about that. The first objective for methanol is to produce olefins from methanol. Technologies available for manufacture of ethylene, propylene, DME, etc., which specialists like Swaminathan will cover that in detail. And like Mr. Elena has said, we tried methanol many years back as a fuel. But in India, as you rightly said, we try something moment it is a few paisa more, more than the normal petrol, we leave that technology. But the entire effort of a scientific team goes waste, because it's like there used to be an advertisement. Kitna deta hai? That means how much mileage it gives. That is our first aim. Cost is our main aim. So in that process, many of the technologies get killed. I think the methanol should be used as a part of the mix for the automobile industry. That requires some changes in the engine. And I believe there are in the shipping line, some of the ships have been converted into marine engines have been converted to use methanol partly, and they are even thinking of using it 100% methanol. So that is an area of interest for the country. So I think Mr. Venkataraman's subject is a very interesting subject. And today, another point which I want to bring to all our attention is, today China is a major producer of methanol, and we import not only from China, from other countries. But majority of our import comes from China. And this is, in fact, the pharma plants, which used to be using for fermentation technology, have been, most of them have gone down in India because it was not economical as compared to China. And China uses a lot of these chemicals, and then they export it to India. So these are some of the points I thought I'll just touch upon that, and the details, of course, to be given by Mr. Venkataraman and his Swaminathan. So I am also eagerly looking forward for understanding the subject of methanol economy. I'm sure that whatever feasibility reports and suggestions which Nandini consultants do will be considered by the government and also by the investors. And we all wish that at least one methanol plant comes up in Tamil Nadu. Thank you for the opportunity given to me. Thank you so much.
Now I request Mr. Venkataraman to give a brief note on the methanol economics. What does it mean?
Thank you, Mr. Elenake. I will give a brief note on the concept of methanol economy, just to make it clear that what is the objective of methanol economy and what it hopes to achieve. Though the word methanol economy was known earlier, it was made very popular by Niti Ayog, who started using the term methanol economy, and it was actively supported by the government of India. Now, what is the objective of the methanol economy and what it hopes to achieve? There are three objectives of the methanol economy. Number one, as far as India is concerned, now present import of crude oil is well over 250 million tons per annum, and 82% of the Indian crude oil requirement is now met by import. In the same way, in the case of natural gas, Indian import of natural gas is now well over 32 billion cubic meter, and more than 50% of Indian requirement of natural gas is met by imports. Now, with both unfortunately, the situation today is India has to necessarily import crude oil and natural gas because the domestic production of crude oil and natural gas has become virtually stagnant. Though some exploration efforts are being made, it is extremely doubtful whether a significant increase in the production of crude oil and natural gas will take place in the foreseeable future. So the dependence on internal and national market for crude oil and natural gas, as far as India is concerned, is total and is almost alarming. Now, the crude oil and natural gas that is imported in India is used for the production of several value-added products, which have high level of relevance to the Indian industrial and economic growth pattern. If India were to register a growth rate of GDP of 6, 7 to 8% per annum, it is inevitable that the crude oil and natural gas consumption in the present stage would increase at 7 to 8% per annum. If the crude oil and natural gas consumption increase, obviously it means it has to be imported. If that is so, by 2050, possibly Indian requirement of crude oil and natural gas will almost become double than what it is today. Today, at 28% of the Indian foreign exchange earnings are spent on importing crude oil and natural gas. If it is going to become double, then the strain on the foreign exchange will become extremely serious, severe, and catastrophic. That's a situation we cannot avoid at all. So one of the objective of the methanol economy is reduce and curtail the use of crude oil and natural gas in the country as much as possible and reduce the dependence. That is number one objective. Number two objective of the methanol economy is the commitment that made by the government of India to Paris Climate Conference to adhere to the ecological standards have to be met. And methanol economy seeks to meet that. Little later I will explain how it is being done. Number third is, from the methanol, a lot of derivative products can be produced. Now, those derivative products are not being produced now, mainly because of the fact that crude oil, natural gas is being imported in a large quantity, and many of these products which can be produced from crude oil and natural gas, as well as methanol, like ethylene and propylene, are not being adequately produced in India. If India were to create a production of methanol and also produce ethylene, propylene, which are called light olefins from methanol, then derivative products will come in a big way to significantly improve the industrial and economic growth of the country. That is the third objective. Now, these three are very clear objectives of the methanol economy. If it is successfully implemented, it will certainly change the face of India. There is no doubt about it. That shows the importance of the phrase methanol economy. Now, in the methanol economy, it has been started by China in a big way, mainly because just like India, China is also excessively dependent on crude oil and natural gas imports, lack of domestic supply. And China has a huge deposits of coal. So China started making from coal whatever it is possible to make from crude oil and natural gas, and has achieved spectacular success so far. This is precisely what we are to emulate. So when talking about the methanol economy and its prospects in India, we cannot but talk about, review the progress of China with regard to the methanol economy. That is what Mr. Swaminathan and Venkataraman from Singapore is going to talk on this. Over to Mr. Swaminathan and Venkataraman.
Thank you, Mr. Venkataraman. Thank you, Mr. Elenake, Mr. Murthy. It's a pleasure to talk in this webinar. I will share a presentation, so I will share some slides and I will proceed with my talk. Okay. Yeah, so I'll spend the next 15 minutes talking primarily about three aspects. Mr. Venkataraman has briefly touched upon the rationale for why we need to have methanol economy and the China scenario. And I will also take a particular case study because we want to also see how China has gone as a strategy going about the methanol as a feedstock and deriving products, and how they've actually made progress over the last 10 years. So I will take a particular case study of ethylene glycol, how China has actually gone ahead and developed very high production capacity of ethylene glycol from using coal as a starting point. See, the rationale Mr. Venkataraman briefly touched upon. See, India's import dependence on crude oil and natural gas, if you see as a trend over the last 6 years, is growing up alarmingly as far as imports is concerned. About 5 years back, India was importing about 77% of its crude needs from imports, and that has gone up as much as 85% last year. So not only is the import level high, but the rate of increase in import dependence is also going up very, very sharply. And that's partly because if you look at our crude production, the crude production has declined alarmingly from to about 19 million tons in FY19. So basically, we are on a downtrend as far as domestic production of crude is concerned, which means that all our growth in GDP has to come from imports of crude, and is actually the dependence is going up even more. Our last year, our crude oil import bill for both crude oil and natural gas was about $110 billion, and it is going up every year, of course, depending upon the crude oil prices, but this is on an upward trend. So there is a search for alternate fuels that can improve the domestic energy security. And the two most important candidates that come up, looking at the experience around the world of countries similar to India, which is basically China, is methanol and DME. Methanol is a very efficient fuel, and in fact more efficient than gasoline, and more ecologically friendly as well, because it has no sulfur emissions, no NO emissions, no particulate matter. So it's a very, very efficient fuel, and it can be blended or almost completely substituted with gasoline to use as a transport fuel, which is what Mr. Ilanahai has also mentioned that India tried many years ago. And as a single carbon compound, it can be produced from coal, it can be produced from natural gas, it can also be produced from biomass. Any product which is able to basically produce synthesis gas, we can produce methanol from. DME is also a very efficient fuel, and it's also a ecologically friendly fuel. It burns with lesser NO and particulate matter and has no SO, sulfur particulate matter as well. It's a viable and clean diesel alternative and can also be blended with LPG. See, because of which we have embarked on a very large program with Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala program for bringing LPG to every household in the country. We have given crores of LPG connections, and our domestic LPG supplies is not enough to meet the demand, and our import of natural gas is going up dramatically. It is also used as an aerosol propellant across various industries, and DME is basically a simplest ether compound, and it can be produced from methanol or directly from synthesis gas. So basically, production of methanol also leads to production of DME, and hence methanol also becomes very important. If you look at China's scenario, China is in the same situation as India as far as its hydrocarbon requirements are concerned. It is an oil and gas lean nation, but it has a very rich coal deposits. The third largest coal reserves in the world. And they have the same problem as India, which is security of energy supply. As the country is growing rapidly, and they are now almost close to US in their GDP and such a large economy, and they don't have enough oil and natural gas as a domestic source, and are also very heavily dependent upon imports of oil and natural gas. And for them, hence, coal becomes very, very important as a source of national strategic requirement. So China embarked on a mission about 10 years back trying to produce from coal, all that can be produced from crude and natural gas. No other country of that size has embarked on such a mission as China has. And so their experience is the one that we have to look up to in order to look at coal to chemicals or liquid fuel, if it has to be seen as a potentially attractive proposition. So this is a challenge and opportunity that I think we have to acknowledge that China has tackled quite creditably if you look at the results they have produced in the last 10 years. If you just simply compare India and China, India holds about 9% of global reserves. So our global coal reserves are also quite high, similar to China. China has about 13% of global coal reserves, although the quality of the coal reserves are quite different. China has much superior quality of coal reserves. Our coal reserves have much higher sulfur content, but still we have about 9% of global coal reserves. At this point in time, China is almost producing 5 times more coal domestically, 5 times more natural gas domestically, and about 6 times more crude domestically. So China, even though they are oil and natural gas poor nation, they still have about 5 to 6 times more domestic production than India is able to achieve. So if India has to grow at 7 to 8% of GDP and approach China's GDP in about 10 to 15 years, it shows the challenge that we have in increasing domestic crude and natural gas, and we don't have the same level of reserves that China has. And so our dependence on imports is going to be even more greater than what it is today. And hence we have to look at alternate means, and the only hydrocarbon we have in abundance within the country is coal. So we have to look at coal very seriously if we have to look at energy security within the country. If you look at the coal chemistry supply chain, what can be produced from coal? So coal is first subject to gasification process, which is under high temperature and pressure to produce synthesis gas, which is nothing but carbon monoxide and hydrogen, from where multiple products can be produced using various processes. So one of them, which is, we can produce electric power, we can produce ammonia, we can produce ethylene glycol. But the most important product that is produced around the world from synthesis gas is basically methanol. And from methanol, using a fluidized bed reaction similar to a catalytic cracking unit, we can produce olefins and dimethyl ether. And that is basically the route that China is also following to produce DME and olefins through this route. Approximately around 1.4 tons of coal as a feedstock is required to produce about 1 ton of methanol. That's basically the process chemistry. If you look at the coal to chemical that China is producing, there is a vast range of chemicals that today China is producing using coal as a starting point. From coal to synthesis gas to methanol, they're producing acetic acid, methyl acetate, from methyl acetate to olefins, and other aromatics such as benzene, toluene, xylene, and other chloromethanes and methyl methacrylate. So there is a wide range of chemicals that China is producing through the methanol route today with coal as a starting point. So this is something that India needs to study very, very hard to see how China has been able to achieve this in about 10 years using domestic coal, and see how India can emulate this. The whole coal chemistry process technology is basically based on 3 key technologies. One is a coal to synthesis gas. The second is synthesis gas to methanol. And the third is methanol to olefins. All of them are coal to synthesis gas and synthesis gas to methanol are both fairly mature technologies. There are about 270 plants operating worldwide on coal to synthesis gas, most of which are actually recent plants. And most of them have come in China because of the demand for methanol to olefins projects that have come up in the last 10 years. These are very, very mature technology providers from Shell and GE Texaco. And most of the projects around the world are from these 2 technology suppliers. From synthesis gas to methanol also, the Lurby process, the Germany Linde process, Mitsubishi Gas Chemical Company process, these are very mature technologies and processes. And these are the processes that are also in use and fairly well-established processes. As far as methanol to olefin is concerned, here China has made a breakthrough. The UOP methanol to low carbon olefin technology was the technology that was prevalent for methanol to olefin. Two Chinese companies, one is Dalian Institute of Chemical Physics. They entered in collaboration with UOP, and Sinopec also started developing their own technology. And so they have come up with fairly mature methanol to olefin technology, which is called the DMTO and SMTO, which is what is used mostly in China today. DMTO technology has the largest market share, and so China has achieved fairly good self-sufficiency as far as the technological aspect is concerned for the methanol to olefin projects in China. So this is a great breakthrough that China has made, because there are not many methanol to olefin projects outside of China, because most of them are petrochemical route. And China has achieved a breakthrough and self-sufficiency in this aspect. If you just look at the overall methanol demand supply balance globally, this is just to illustrate what methanol is being used for today. About 25% of overall consumption of methanol today is for methanol to olefin. So that is and about 20% of methanol today is used for alternate fuels, which is gasoline blending and DME. So about 45% of global methanol usage, and almost all of it is from China, is being used for olefins and used for fuel. So this, and about 70% of methanol today in China is produced from coal. So coal to methanol, to about 45% of global usage of methanol towards olefin and gasoline blending is the kind of scale that China has built to reduce the dependence on oil and natural gas and grow their domestic self-reliance. The MTO demand between the last 5 years has grown at about 10% CAGR. That is the growth of methanol demand because of MTO. And this is the fastest growth in among all the segments for in terms of the growth of methanol. And just to give you a comparison, China uses about 25 million tons for gasoline blending. India consumes about 56 million tons of motor spirit and LPG. So basically about half of India's motor spirit and LPG consumption is what China uses using methanol as blending. So that is the kind of scale that they have achieved in reducing their dependence on oil and natural gas as far as alternate fuels are concerned. If you look at the global price trends, this has been important for Indian suppliers of methanol, because the landed cost of methanol in India has always been much cheaper than the production cost of methanol in India, because we don't have the raw material competitive advantage. Most methanol around the world, apart from China, is produced from natural gas, and the landed cost of natural gas in India cannot compete with players like Iran, and from where we get about most of our methanol, Iran and Saudi Arabia, because of their competitive advantage in natural gas price. The methanol prices peaked around 2018 because of the heavy demand from MTO projects in China, and they have declined since, because for reasons that I will come to later, the growth of MTO projects in China have also come down considerably in the last 1 or 2 years, and that's primarily because of economical reasons. So as a result of which, global methanol prices have also come under pressure in the last 2 years. If you look at the number of coal to olefin and methanol to olefin plants that have been created in China in the last, virtually all of them have come in the last 10 years. There are about 39 plants and a total capacity of about 14.4 million tons per annum, operating at 80% utilization. So there's a considerable capacity that they have built in CTO and MTO plants. And in terms of DME as well, about 90% of the global capacity for DME is today in China. The global capacity is around 13.3 million tons, and DME capacity in China amounts to more than 12 million tons. So the success of DME around the world, and if India has to look at DME, India has to look at China, because 90% of the global capacity in the world in China, and they are the most successful in using DME. They use DME for blending for public transport, for buses, for commercial vehicles, and they've been very, very successful at doing that, and their experience has been quite good. Next, I want to take a case study of ethylene glycol. The reason I want to take a case study is while we talk at a helicopter level about what is happening in China, it's also quite useful to see how China is going about in terms of its strategy, in terms of self-reliance and developing a new technology. See, ethylene glycol is a product that has two large uses. One is as an antifreeze and a coolant in engines in summer, and it's used as an antifreeze in winter and as a coolant in summer. And it's also used as a raw material for polyester. So China imports about 1/4 of world's ethylene glycol output of about 31 million tons. And the reason why they import is because ethylene glycol around the world is produced from ethylene, a basic chemical that's made from oil and natural gas. So China is not competitive as far as producing ethylene glycol from ethylene is concerned because of cost disadvantage. And so China wanted to do something about it. In 2011, China had virtually zero capacity of coal-based ethylene glycol plants in China. Today, they have about 3.5 million tons and capacity, and about which represents about 40% of their ethylene glycol capacity, and they plan to double it to by around 2022. So they have been very successful in adopting coal-based technology to produce ethylene glycol, which they had almost zero capacity in 2011. If you look at the basic technology was has been in existence for decades. There's a company from Japan called Ube Industries. They developed a process called Ube high-chem process to produce ethylene glycol from coal to synthesis gas, and it is a multi-step reaction using basically consumption and regeneration of a hazardous chemical gas called methyl nitrate. So this is a very complex technology, and because it was complex, it was quite expensive to produce ethylene glycol from this route, and so it was not adopted since the 1970s. But around 10 years back, there was a Chinese company called East China Engineering Science and Technology. It's an engineering firm. They collaborated with a Japanese company called HiChem. The HiChem was a process licensor who was basically focused on trying to match Japanese technologies with Chinese needs. So they together collaborated and trying to update the Ube process to see if the process can be adapted to Chinese needs. So in 2012, Chinese company Xinjiang Tianyi, they opened a 50,000 ton plant using the updated Ube process. It was a small plant. And concurrently, another Chinese company called Pujing Chemical Industry, they tweaked the methyl nitrite process and they began to license a competing version of it. The key difference was basically that they developed a different catalyst, and they are two different processes. The coal-based ethylene glycol was impure compared to the traditionally made ethylene glycol, but still it was attractive to the polyester producers because it was selling at a discount. So they were able to create a small market for it. Because the technology was complex, with the reliance on methyl nitrite, the plants were of very small scale. So they could not scale up these plants because it was a hazardous chemicals and they could not create big plants. Alternatively, what they did was, there was another company called Jutai Group. Jutai Group collaborated with Johnson Matthey. Johnson Matthey and Eastman developed another route through formaldehyde, basically from coal to methanol to formaldehyde, reacting with carbon monoxide and refined to yield ethylene glycol. So they collaborated with them for over 4 years to try to perfect the technology for Chinese needs. And after 4 years, they have become confident of the technology. And Jutai Group is now setting up a huge facility in Inner Mongolia. It's the first commercial plant that is going to come up with this technology in 2021. It's a plant of about 1 million tons. So, and Air Products and Chemicals is investing about $650 million to produce a syngas plant in the same facility. So they have perfected the technology using low-grade coal, so which they think is possible. So this ethylene glycol, they claim, is of higher quality than the product made by even the Ube process, and the company says it's even more higher quality than even the petrochemical route. They say that this product from this route is competitive against the petrochemical route when the price of oil is over $50 per barrel. So this is one of the big issues with coal-based route compared to the oil-based route, which is the competitiveness of this route when oil prices go up and down. The coal-based route becomes more competitive when oil prices go up, and the coal-based route is less competitive when the oil prices go down. So there is a certain break-even, and they say the break-even is about $50 per barrel as far as oil price is concerned. So this is the part that I suggested earlier, that even though the China has developed a very high level of capacity for methanol to olefin process, they still have a challenge. So last couple of years, the MTO industry has seen a negative margin in China because of the rising methanol price. The methanol route is profitable when oil prices are high. When the oil prices are volatile as they are now, there was a time about 4 or 5 years ago when oil prices almost hit $150. When they hit $150 a barrel, the coal-based route looks very profitable. But the last 1 year, we have seen the oil price even go as low as $20 and $30 a barrel, which makes the coal-based route very uncompetitive and difficult to justify from an economics point of view when the oil prices become so low. So the rising price of methanol from a new wave of MTO plants actually drove the methanol price in China in 2018. So as a consequence, there was a sharp drop in number of new MTO projects because the existing MTO plants were starting to see negative margins in 2018 and 2019. There is also an expected wave of new steam cracker investment in China. Between 2020 and 2025, there are almost 20 million tons of capacity of steam cracker plants that are expected to come on stream. That is expected to put a lot of pressure on the olefin price for the next 4 years. So with olefin price under pressure and methanol prices also driven high in the last 2 years, the number of new MTO plants have come to a trickle. There are not many new MTO plants, and the MTO plants that are running they were running with negative margins last year. The CTO producers are not as sensitive to feedstock price because for them, what matters is the cost of extracting coal. But the problem with CTO producers that they have to tackle is environmental issues. The CO2 emissions from the CTO route is still on the higher side, and there is a technology improvement that still needs to be achieved to bring the CO2 levels down, especially with the emphasis on reducing carbon output around the world. So there is a technological challenge as far as CTO producers are concerned that they still need to tackle. So the further competitiveness of both CTO and MTO producers would be linked to both the oil prices as well as the technology advancements that need to be done to bring the CO2 emissions down as far as the CTO process is concerned. So the oil prices, of course, in the medium to long run, there are conflicting opinions. There are some who say that the world has hit peak oil, that there are, with electric vehicles and many other usual consumers of oil moving away from oil. So there is uncertainty as far as oil prices is concerned in the future, and that probably also puts many methanol to olefin producers to make them think whether they should go ahead with new projects. So those are basically the challenges that the CTO and MTO producers have in China, and what India also needs to look at. So with that, I conclude what I had to share, and I will pass on to Mr. Elena again.
I think excellent presentation. The one question has come before handing over to Venkataraman. Somebody asked when the methanol is being imported in India, still the methanol economics is possible, they're asking.
That's a question I'm going to answer now.
Okay. Yeah. Now over to Venkataraman.
Yeah.
Excellent presentation. Thank you, Swaminathan.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, at the end, some questions may be there. Please wait.
Yeah.
As far as this methanol economy is concerned, I basically explained the objectives of the methanol economy earlier. Now in China, which is something spectacular progress, as explained by Mr. Swaminathan, with regard to the capacity, with regard to the speed with which they have put up the plants, and the fact that they have long-term plans, not short-term, and they don't give up the ideas in a knee-jerk reaction. These are all something which we need to learn from China. But in the case of this methanol, to as far as India is concerned, I will take two products as a case study, where a lot of other products can also be made, which are of great relevance as far as the Indian requirements are concerned. One is our ether, and second one is the light olefins. Now, the dimethyl ether is one product, then the ethylene propylene is another product. Now, I'm asking, saying that we must produce DME, we must produce olefins from methanol, but where is the methanol? That is the question that we have been asked now, which we are duty bound to answer. So first, I will talk about the dimethyl ether. Why is the need for it? I will talk about this ethylene propylene. What is the need for it? And later on, we'll also discuss about how to tackle the peculiar situation of India wanting to put a methanol plant but not having adequate methanol. These are three aspects which I'm going to deal with now. As far as dimethyl ether is concerned, it has three applications. Basically, one is as a fuel for blending with LPG. Other one is as a fuel for blending with diesel. And third thing as a propellant. See, propellant, LPG, now all these areas where DME can be used, it can substitute the diesel and the LPG. Now here in the case of this, one property of this DME is it has oxygen. So when DME burns, it burns fully. There is no tail emissions. In the case of LPG, this is not the case. So when DME is going to be blended with LPG, to that extent that DME is being blended, the emissions like such as nitrous oxide and all coming out of this LPG burning will considerably get reduced. Similarly, in the case of a diesel, again, it can be blended with the DME can be blended with the diesel. And in the case of the usage of the DME blended diesel, there is some alterations required in the automobile designs. Third, in the case of the use of propellant, all over India right now, we are using LPG or some other thing as the propellant. It goes in these cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, spray paints and all that, where usage of DME is not there. And it appears that based on our survey, nobody is thinking of using DME as far as the propellant is in India is concerned, because no application development efforts have been made so far. So we will confine ourselves to two potential application areas, namely DME for DME and of course, ethylene propylene. As far as this DME is concerned, now for 1 ton of DME, the requirement of methanol is 1.4 ton. That's number one that we need to keep in mind. Number two is, now this blending of DME with the LPG can be done to a level of 15 to 20%. Similarly, blending of diesel to DME to diesel can be done to a level of 5 to 10%. That is a recommendation that NITI Aayog is giving right now. So if you now the Indian requirement of LPG, if you take, it is well over 34 million tons, and India is importing around 12 million tons of LPG. Similarly, Indian consumption of diesel is around 81 million tons, for which again petrochemical feedstock is the requirement. So when you are going to mix DME with LPG or DME with diesel, there is going to be substantial saving in the foreign exchange by avoiding the import of the crude oil and natural gas to that particular extent. Now, assuming that out of the present consumption of this LPG in India, assuming only 10% we are going to take into consideration, and use 15% of LPG to be mixed with the 15% of DME to be mixed with LPG. And at the same time, considering we are going to make use of only 5% of the diesel consumption in India, use that 5% for mixing with this DME. Our Indian requirement of the DME as per our calculation by 2024-25 will be 6,47,000 tons per annum. By 2029-30, it's going to be 1.2 million tons per annum. There's a huge demand potential for DME in this country. And the primary benefits of the DME we are going to get here is environmental comforts. And India is spending a lot of money for the environmental comfort. For example, we are introducing BS6 standards. Refineries are being asked to spend several crores of rupees. Power plants are being asked to spend several thousands of crores of rupees for flue gas desulfurization plants. So government now in all this by flue gas desulfurization, power production is not going to increase. Power cost is going to marginally go up. Still, the government of India correctly believes that investment in the environmental factors are very, very important. So in the case of DME, using it, the environmental advantage that it gives is overwhelming. At the same time, you are not losing. Because the production cost and the marketable cost of this DME is going to be roughly 40 rupees per kilogram. But now the delivered price of the LPG is around 44 rupees per kilogram. So DME cost is 4 rupees less. In our calculation, by 2024-25, 80 crores of rupees will be the foreign exchange saving. Now, okay, that may not be a big sum for today's government of India, which is a huge budget deficit, but the environmental factors cannot be overlooked. It is worth getting into it. Now, what is the economic capacity of this DME? We have worked it out. We conclude that for 1 lakh ton per annum of DME, requirement of this investment is just 75 crores of rupees. So what India should do now is not send one DME plant, split up at least some 20 or 30 DME plants in different parts of the country. Nothing wrong with this. We got 500 sugar units, more than 300 cement units, more than 400 paper units. Why not we have 20 or 30 DME units? See, why I am saying this is, a 1 lakh ton, 75 crores investment is well within the investment capability of several of the entrepreneurs in India. There's no issue on this. Now, this is as far as DME is concerned. Now, let us go to next product, our ethylene and propylene. Now, ethylene has a very important application area, such as polyethylene, now PVC, polyvinyl chloride, monoethylene glycol, ethylene oxide, and all these kind of things. Similarly, propylene has got a lot of important applications like polypropylene, isopropyl alcohol, acetone phenol, octanol, 2-ethyl-hexanol, propylene oxide, and all this. What is strange here is, now most of these projects, derivative products like PVC or isopropyl alcohol or acetone phenol or 2-ethyl-hexanol, we find we don't have enough quantity of ethylene available. We don't have enough quantity of propylene available in the country. See, what is happening here is refineries produce ethylene and propylene. Now, most of the refineries we produce ethylene and propylene use it for the production of polymers like polyethylene or polypropylene and all this. So, market, what quantity of these ethylene and propylene that the refineries sell in the market is very little. That is not available for adequate for the production of derivative products. Then, what about import of ethylene and propylene? Ethylene and propylene import is very hazardous, and there is considerable number of transport issues. That is why the import of ethylene and propylene is not a large quantity. Export is also not a large quantity. See, for example, I tell you, ethylene has to have been done in a cryogenic ethylene form. When the cryogenic ethylene comes, one characteristic is it tends to build the pressure at roughly 1 pound per day. So that there is a transport restriction in the container. Transport restriction, the movement of this ethylene is very severe. So there is no feasibility of spectacular increase in the production of ethylene or propylene in the country. India has to necessarily produce ethylene and propylene in adequate quantity. That ethylene and propylene in adequate quantity to meet the India's requirements cannot be met by the refineries, because refineries produce several products, not only ethylene and propylene. Investments are very large. For example, Chennai Petroleum Corporation is now planning a unit for Nagapattinam refinery complex, where propylene is going to be produced, polypropylene is going to be produced. The investment is roughly around 13,600 crores. So investments are very, very large. So ethylene and propylene availability requirement, you can't depend on these refineries. An alternate method has to be found out for this. Now, what could be the demand for ethylene and propylene? In our calculation shows, considering perhaps that the number of new projects are being planned for ethylene and propylene, considering the fact all these new plants are going to materialize, they all have arrangement for production of polyethylene or polypropylene and all that, considering that they are going to meet it. The number of derivative products like polyvinyl chloride or isopropyl alcohol and all this, where the importers are going at steady rate because of the lack of propylene and ethylene in the country. Assuming for the gap in supply for the derivative products to be met, requirement of ethylene would be roughly around 6.1 million tons. Not a small quantity. 6.1 million tons, that is the capacity that is needed. As a matter of fact, one of the international experts that I was talking to recently, he came and told me, sir, are you all thinking about future in India? Because you said the requirement of ethylene and propylene is going at such a phase for the production of derivative products. You are not taking any steps to create capacity for ethylene and propylene. Are you worried about it? What is going to happen? Why have you not thought about it? And naturally, you can't do this because of the crude oil and natural gas price. What about the alternate steps? So these are the two things. Now we worked it out. Our calculation shows for a capacity of 1.5 lakh tons per annum of methanol from olefin from methanol, investment is going to be roughly 1,500 crores. That is our conservative estimate. I found the project is adequately profitable. That is something which we can do. Several plants can be put up. Now, all is wonderful. I have said you must put this, I should put that. Then where is the methanol available? Are we building are we constructing a building without a foundation? That is a big issue that is concerned. Now government of India is no doubt concerned about it. With no feasibility of the production of crude oil and natural gas improving, with absolute necessity to produce DME in the country, with absolute necessity to produce ethylene and propylene in the country, alternate feedstock has to be obtained. Then the government of India has no alternative and then go find out how China has tackled. That's why Mr. Swaminathan talked about the Chinese scenario. China, they produce huge quantities of the coal, ethylene and propylene, olefins, and dimethyl ether from coal. So government of India has now asked, particularly after the Modi government came into power, because we have been talking about the coal to methanol project for the last 2 decades. I have been hearing this. Nothing whatsoever has happened except some pilot plant being put here, there, and all this. The same, suppose you open a newspaper 3 years back, you will read the same thing as you are reading it today. Now, Modi government is insisting on a creation of coal to methanol projects. So, Coal India has now gone ahead. They proposed to, they have sent around 6.5 lakh tons of methanol, for which they have estimated the investment is going to be 5,000 crores. They are going to take it from the Dankuni, West Bengal. That's what they are going to take from coal. Now, there is an issue. The issue is the ash content of the Indian coal. In China, when methanol is produced from coal, the ash content of most of the coal available in China is 15%. Indonesia now is going to put up a large methanol plant based on coal, where the ash content is around 12%. In India, ash content is much higher. This Coal India now has given these invited tenders from abroad for offering technology for the coal to methanol projects. Coal India has told them, I can give you coal of only 28% ash content. Now, 28% ash content is slightly on the higher side, which is much higher side than what China is having. What happens here is, when your ash content in the coal is more, then the yield comes down, particulate matter goes up, during the classification goes up, the cinders are also slightly acidic. So obviously it has to go for some environmental treatment plants that we put up. But internationally, technologies are available to produce methanol from low ash coal or high ash coal. In China itself, I contacted 3 or 4 organizations who are all producing coal from high ash coal, 35%. They said they are producing comfortably. Because they have put some additional cost is there, they have put it comfortably. So this is something what India has to do. Now, why this coal? Because we have to do is, in India, the methanol scenario today is, there are a number of methanol plants in operation. Not in really in operation, in existence. Number of methanol plants have been closed now because they are not able to compete with the imported methanol price. Why? The reason is, in India, we produce methanol from natural gas. In places like Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, they produce methanol from natural gas. The price at which natural gas is available in Iran is much, much lower than the natural gas price available for a unit in India. Because from Iran, or when you have to get the, or Qatar, when you have to get the natural gas, it has been liquefied there, brought into India in the ship containers, then regasified, and then transported for use. So the end price, feed cost price for natural gas for a methanol producer in India is much higher than the feed cost price for natural gas for a methanol producer in Iran. So what is happening? We just can't compete. So presently, Indian import of methanol has gone up to 20 lakh tons per annum, and it is going up at 7% per year. There is no feasibility of India putting up globally competitive methanol plant based on natural gas. We have no alternative. And how to overcome this problem? Now we are going for the coal to methanol plant. Then the coal to methanol plant, it's still in a pre-feasibility stage because offers have not come. What is going to be the ultimate economics with the Indian coal has not been known. And any pilot plant has been done with the Indian coal. Very special precautions and treatment is required, which is different from the coal from elsewhere. We do not know. So in all said, with all optimistic estimates, possibly if everything goes well, God willing, the coal to methanol project can come up in India by 2015-16. We can't wait up to that. We have to make alternate steps. What is the alternate plan? One is import methanol at the price of 20 rupees per kg, which we are right now getting. Based on the imported methanol, you produce DME. Based on the imported methanol, you produce olefins, both ethylene and propylene, and sort out the feedstock problem once in a way. Some people may agree with this assertion. Some people may not agree with this assertion. Some people may say, if you want to avoid import of crude oil and natural gas, now you want to import methanol. It is a question. Then there's a very strong argument. Then another alternate way of doing it is, why not we go and put up a methanol plant in places where natural gas price is low, and then bring the natural gas to be a joint venture. There are a number of case studies for here. For example, you take Coromandel International. Coromandel International, as a joint venture, has put up a phosphoric acid plant in Tunisia, and they get the phosphoric acid from Tunisia, which is transported to India. because India does not have enough rock phosphate of adequate specification. Same way, Kripco has put up a granulated urea plant in Oman and get its requirement of urea from there. It's a very competitive price. Now, the latest is Reliance Industries is talking with Abu Dhabi to set up an ethylene dichloride plant in Abu Dhabi based on ethylene available in Abu Dhabi. So, the ethylene dichloride is a feedstock for the production of PVC. So, my suggestion that India should put up a methanol plant abroad to meet the Indian requirement of methanol is nothing strange or unknown or not experienced so far. So, one thing we need to keep in mind, the transportation cost of LNG is around $150 per ton, whereas transportation cost of methanol is only $10 to $20 per ton. This is IHS calculation. Internationally, they are given this calculation. So transportation cost of methanol is going to be very, very low. So this is one option available for India. Second option that can be thought of is, in Canada, there is a company who has perfected technology for the production of methanol from municipal solid waste, MSW. That company has set up a plant of capacity 50,000 tons per annum. It's operating very successfully. And now that company has been certified by several international agencies and approved for the quality of methanol and certificate for the plant and machinery, certificate for the efficiency of the process. Now, based on this particular company, now Netherlands is putting up a methanol plant from municipal solid waste of capacity 90,000 tons per annum. Why not we do it in India? We got plenty of MSW, municipal solid waste, and there is available all over India. So you can have one plant in Calcutta, another plant in Indore, third in Mumbai, fourth in Chennai, fifth in Thoothukudi, or several more, which we can put up. At capacity of 50,000 tons for which technology has been stabilized, that company is willing to give technology, if we can go ahead with this. This has twin advantages. Number one, Mr. Modi's Clean India campaign will be partly served because the MSW will be used productively for the production of methanol, and methanol is much needed in the country. Foreign exchange savings will be there. Then working out the cost of this methanol from MSW, I believe, my working calculation shows the cost of methanol would be 1.5 times the cost of the present methanol import in India. Then the government of India has to necessarily give a commission, some sort of subsidy for this. Nothing wrong, because it is spending thousands of crores of rupees in Clean India campaign. Part of the money can be sent here for giving a subsidy, because by that, this load on the Clean India campaign will also considerably come down. So this is the scenario which we have to do. These are the three options that is available for us. It is for us to decide how to go about. So to sum it up, one is, it is absolutely important that DME has to be produced in India for an environmental issue. It is absolutely important that India has to necessarily produce ethylene and propylene from India, because we can't import it in a large quantity. And several derivative products which can be produced from ethylene and propylene are not produced in India due to want of ethylene and propylene. Based on natural gas and crude oil and the refinery, they are certainly not going to produce the type of quantity of the ethylene that is propylene that is required by the country. Alternate steps are required for the ethylene and propylene. One alternate step that India can do is the coal, about which I discussed. Second, immediate thing, you can't wait till the Coal India to complete the project. We have no time to lose now. So we have to move forward, set up immediately, start importing the methanol, or set up a methanol plant abroad. Simultaneously, three steps that go together. Take steps to implement a methanol plant abroad as a joint venture. Take steps to put up a plant, dimethyl ether in India. Takes from methanol. Take steps to put up a ethylene and propylene plant from methanol in India. All the things will go together. Probably by 2013, 14, if we can move with the dynamism that is required, probably it will be a win-win situation for all of us, for methanol, for Indian economy, and Indian growth and environmental factors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Venkataraman. Very interesting presentation. So one question for Swaminathan is, what is the energy cost in the coal route to methanol and from gas route to methanol? The comparison on power consumption or energy consumption. Do you have any data?
I will answer this.
Yeah.
See, basically, as far as the India is concerned, the coal ash content is much higher compared to China. That's one of the issues. Because of this, what is happening is you have to not only, when you heat the coal, you not only heat the coal, but also you have to heat the ash. So that is a wasted heat. So the energy consumption, as far as India's coal to energy methanol plant, is yet to be adequately established, which can be done by Coal India would be working in it. I know what is the energy consumption for coal to methanol in China, but in India it cannot be said because the higher ash content is there. This question yet to be answered, which is a very, very important question. That will have a high reflection on the cost of production of methanol from India.
Yeah. What is the ethylene imports to India? One question. Ethylene import. You mentioned demand. You mentioned 6.1 million tons of ethylene demand. What is the import now per year?
Now ethylene is being imported to a level of around 1 lakh tons or so, and a small quantity of ethylene is also exported. The ethylene is imported by people like PVC producers like Phenolics, who have got a terminal for import of ethylene. They are importing. The quantity is not large. Compared to the requirement of 6.1 million, which I'm talking about, import of ethylene is hardly 1 or 2 lakh tons of ethylene, which is a very small quantity. And certainly the kind of large quantity of 5 or 6 million of ethylene import is not possible, mainly because of the transport issues, port handling facilities here in India, it is not possible. No, ethylene is imported, propylene is imported.
The methanol to chemical, it is good project. But why don't you recommend to the Prime Minister? Because he was talking about the crude oil reduction 6 years back. But concretely, nothing has been done in this country to reduce the crude oil import. Knowing well that oil production is decreasing and it is uncertainty in crude oil. Only they are talking about refineries, addition of refineries. But they have never discussed about this methanol economics. Why this sorry state of affairs?
I agree with you. And I just can't take up with the Prime Minister because I have no access to him. But then I have been writing articles, sending communications and all that. But don't hold the government responsible for this. Government of India is announced the methanol economy. Government of India is willing to give incentives. Government of India is virtually forcing Coal India to go ahead with methanol, coal to methanol. Whatever is possible within the control of the Government of India is doing. But Indian investors, entrepreneurs have to rise up to the occasion. Government can do only so much. When the government gives you a chance, go to coal methanol, come with a proposal, I will approve. Proposal is not going, who is to blame? Should you blame the Government of India or should you and investors?
No. My question is, instead of having 10 more refineries, why don't you think of 1, 2 methanol to chemical plants by the same oil companies? See, now ethanol plants are being put up by the Hindustan Petroleum and other oil companies. You have suggested that 20 DME plants throughout the India. There are 20 refineries. They can have 1 DME plant. It is not a big investment for a refinery. I mean, it could be a joint venture. It could be a joint venture. But nothing is being thought in those lines. It is only like the Kuduraike Kadivalam Katnamari. We are all talking about only the refinery expansion against the gasoline thing.
As now,
electric vehicle is being discussed.
Can I come in?
Yes,
yeah, Mr. Venkataraman's idea is very good. What we'll do is I will discuss with him later, and Mr. Ellen and I will make a representation through ICC. In fact, yesterday we had an awards day where the Secretary ECPC said, any idea, any new thing which ICC brings up, we will take it to the Prime Minister. So I think this is a very good suggestion of Mr. Venkataraman. If we'll put down all this properly, and then we'll ask our ICC Mumbai to take it up with the ministry. So let us see what it moves. And regarding the second point, what Mr. Elena has said, I would like to pay attention about 2 days back, the transport minister, I mean the highways minister, Mr. Gadkari has said he's going to advise the concerned ministry to add methanol as a part of the mixture, and he's going to request the automobile industry to ensure their engines will be able to take up this fixed capacities. This just came in the paper 2 days back. I thought I'll just clarify this.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you. It's always Mr. Gadkari is a good for talking about this methanol and economy, but not coming from the petroleum minister. That is what I am worried. Now, with this thing, I thank the speakers, and now I will request Mr. Prabhakaran to give his concluding remarks. Prabhakaran is from Malladi Pharma. He is our treasurer of Chemical Industry Association. He is the vice president of Malladi Pharma. He is a methanol user, and he is working on this liberalization of methanol imports to India, plus the concessions to be given to the methanol users in Tamil Nadu, because a lot of restrictions are there in Tamil Nadu. That's a different topic altogether. But now I will request Prabhakaran to give the concluding remarks.
I'm not able to hear.
I think he's on mute.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, now it's okay.
Yeah. Good evening, friends. Sorry, my mic was a problem. Good evening, friends. It was a very wonderful, comprehensive and thorough presentation on methanol economy. Mr. Venkataraman and Mr. Swaminathan, they gave a lot of information on this. And so it is exciting to know that this methanol economy is going to be the future for India, country like India. The opportunities in business growth and the environmental as well as commercial benefits for a country like India is phenomenal. And I could see many more information in Methanol Institute website as well as Niti Ayog. And no, the efforts of India are, apart from Mr. Venkataraman said, into CO2 capturing and developing indigenous technology to develop methanol from Indian coal, that is high ash content coal. All these are encouraging. So we look forward to a bigger prospects from this methanol economy, and hope people like Mr. Venkataraman and our associations, ICC, Mr. Murthy and Mr. Ilanagai will convey this to the government of India as well as Tamil Nadu to bring in more industries in this sector. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
The poverty.
Chennai, you are muted. You are muted.
Yeah, anything on these questions, please write to Nandini, Mr. Venkataraman, or to Mr. Murthy, or to CAA. We will be happy to answer your questions.